Me right now is Dr. Ernest Bauer, and I'm very happy to have you here. We realize that you have come a long way, and this is one of the reasons why we want to speak to you, because Global Movement of the Moderate is the initiative of the Malaysian government directly from the Prime Minister's office. And I was wondering if you could let us know what is your impression about how the concept has been used both by the Malaysian government and how it's deployed in the conference so far.
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here in Malaysia. Malaysian hospitality is really unmatched, so thank you for including me. I think the initiative that the Prime Minister announced in the global movement of the moderates is very timely. It's something that, as an American, I can say is very warmly welcomed. We're looking for threads in our foreign policy and global engagement that include compassion, moderation, and I think our President Obama, has spoken on moderation and Islam many times. I think the other point that was made in the conference is that moderation is not only a religious thing; it has to do with extremism in all areas. So. I think speaking out for that middle group is very important. So I think the conference is starting to underline some of those key themes.
Well, the Malaysian government is trying to lead the effort in the global movement of moderation. What are the first few things that, in your view, that a government like Malaysia can do in order to create the original momentum for this movement?
Yeah. Well, I think you're already doing it. Speaking out, saying something. You can't underestimate how important that is. So speaking out and talking about Malaysia's role, I think that's very important. Malaysia is like the United States. You know, we were both British colonies. We're both sort of melting pots. We both love family and friends, and we love our food, right? So I think as an American, I feel very comfortable with where Malaysia, what Malaysia is about, and I think having the Prime Minister go onto the world stage and start to assert Malaysia's experience and share that and as a model, I think is going to be very valuable, not only in Asia context, but also in a global context.
The Malaysian Prime Minister has actually promoted the idea of moderation in various platforms and forums such as Commonwealth and ASEAN.
Yes.
In the event that United States and Malaysia were to collaborate on the global movement of the moderate, even if it's purely from the non-governmental perspective, what are the platforms that the two partners can explore to bring the message of moderation to a wider global audience?
Sure, it's a good question. I think people are really important. So I would say that the answer to your question is it's about leadership.
Okay.
With American leaders who have that story to tell, and I can think of some good Americans who would match up with some very good Malaysians. I think together we can start that discussion, and we should reach out to others, like our friends from Indonesia, from Europe, from the Middle East, and then broaden the discussion. But I hope we can work together as the United States to support this effort.
Well, if we were to broaden the regional canvas a little bit further, and you have mentioned Indonesia, and of course Indonesia is one of the countries in the regions that have promoted itself as a moderate Muslim country. What are the commonalities in Indonesia and Malaysia that both governments should explore in order to strengthen or consolidate the message of moderation beyond the issue of religious pluralism?
Well, to be honest with you, I think one of the most important things is you can't really speak about this unless you're doing it at home.
True.
And I think that's why people and leaders are important. They've got to tell the story about how moderation works in Indonesian society, how it works in Malaysian society, and I think that's going to be crucial. From a strong base, your voice will go far. And I think both countries have good stories to tell. I think it's a point of common interest for both countries. And again, I think the idea that was one of the most attractive ideas that I heard at this conference was that moderation isn't only about religion, and it's not specifically targeted at Islam, right? It's moderation is an idea that should go across, religion, business practices, our foreign policy. So I think that was a very attractive idea, and I think we should broaden the discussion again beyond religion.
Okay. Well, I was wondering if I could pick your mind as a political scientist. I'm not sure if you see yourself as one, but given the very differences in the systemic attributes of the different countries, United States with its own kind of political system, Indonesia, Malaysia, so on and so forth, from your perspective as an American, if Malaysian government were to approach the United States on the concept of moderation, which arm or division of the government should we start to should we look into? Would it be the Congress, the White House, or State Department, or whatever?
I think you could start with the embassy here. You've got a tremendous ambassador in Paul Jones, and he can help guide. I think foreign policy for sure. So the State Department is going to be one stop. The White House is also has marked its interest in this issue. So you clearly have a partner there. One of the strongest parts of American society on issues like this is the non-government sector. So please work with NGOs. Think about some of the think tanks. My own think tank, the CSIS, would be happy to develop some ideas with you. Again, I'd be looking for leaders, and I think you'll find that in Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. I think some of the movements in the United States will match up nicely with your objectives.
Given the fact that the United States and Malaysia are entering possibly an election year, especially in the case of Malaysia, and usually during the election period, rhetorics will be significantly shrill, would focus on nationalist issues, pet issues, so on and so forth.
Right.
How can the two sides focus on moderations when their rhetoric may not be able to reconcile?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're definitely in an election year in the United States. November 6th is our election. I'd love to know when yours is going to be. But I think the answer is that to me, and I talked about this at the conference, the moderating force is the voter, because the voters want to promote a fair, a free, an environment where they can get a job, get a better education, move ahead for their children, and I think. Actually, I think in an election year we should look to voters to be a real voice of moderation. So. In a way, I think sort of bottom up is a way to think about the election year for moderation. Politicians in our country are saying some wild things right now. In fact, I don't know if you've seen the Republican debates, but there's some very strange ideas coming out. But that's the process, right? I mean, this is in a way, an election is like a marketplace of ideas. Right. And the voters get to choose whose ideas they want to promote and to support. So my answer to your question is, let's look to the man who's got the vote this year, and let him be the voice of moderation.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Usually, when the Prime Minister goes to the United States to make a delivery, to deliver a speech, he does it in the United Nations General Assembly every September. Is there any platform in the United States, in the governmental or non-governmental circles, that can allow the Malaysian Prime Minister to articulate that message to a broad audience in the United States? Absolutely. I mean, we for CSIS for one would invite him to speak, but I think there's other options. I mean, he's got the universities are tremendous opportunities there, and I hope that the Prime Minister, when he comes, might also think about
coming to Washington and meeting some of our government leaders. September is going to be a tricky time because it'll be just a month and a half before our own elections. But I think that the invitation would be wide open for him to talk about this issue.
You mentioned that moderation should be approached in various forms, should be analyzed and approached in various forms, and we understand that. In fact, that's one of the theme of the conference too. Now, in light of what has come out from the conference over the last few days, with a lot of people talking about Islamophobia, so on and so forth,
right.
To what extent should the Malaysian government focus on Islamophobia as an issue when it's trying to engage the American audience? Is it really a significant
I wouldn't say it's a
concern?
core issue, no. I mean, I think it's an important issue, but I think it's one that Americans have to grapple with. I think a broader conceptualization of moderation, and I come to the United States, my recommendation, come to the United States and talk about what can we do together. I would like to see, I thought the conference was a good start, but it's a lot of voices talking about different things. I'd like to see the GMM focus on what we can do as the next step. Specifically, what can we do? And I think, to me, education is a big part of that. Best practices is a big part of that. Teaming. I'd like to see teams of countries that want to work on an issue, or teams of leaders. So we might team, Malaysia, Indonesia. I just met a man from Gambia who had some good ideas, and maybe the United States on a team to look at some aspect of moderation. I think that's going to be more results driven, and then we'll have some good stories to tell from working together on some of these issues.
I realize that the Obama administration, when he came into office, is trying to reach out to the Muslim world in the widest sense possible. He has been to Indonesia, he has also visited Cairo, Turkey, so on and so forth. If Malaysia and the United States were to work together in light of what's happening right now in the Middle East, what is the message that both government should send to people who are now rallying in the streets almost indefinitely?
Yeah, I think the message should be empowerment of the voter, right? So I think there's a lot of fear of sort of surface fear of what, for instance, an Islamist party in control would mean, right? To me, if people have the right to vote and there are institutions to protect, free voting, I think they'll choose the ideas that they want, and they'll choose the politicians that have those ideas. So, if Egypt wants, an Islamist party to be in control, if they can be elected in, and then if the people don't like what they're doing or they're not happy, they can vote them out. That's pretty good. I mean, it might not be perfect right away, but it's a process. And I think that's probably an area that the United States would sort of support in general. Or I think we should be supporting it. It fits with sort of if you will, a moderate promotion of a key foreign policy theme that's really important to the United States, which is promoting democracy. We don't need countries to look like us or have our system, but we want to promote the idea of freedom and the right to select your leaders.
Well, some governments have their preferences in working with certain kind of administrations. Some like the Republicans more than the Democrats, and vice versa. Now, if we were to look at the list of candidates right now in the Republican primaries, who are the ones who would you describe as a moderate, so that Malaysian audience can understand what moderation means, personified in the form of a presidential candidate?
It's a hard question. I think there are moderates there. I think clearly a guy like John Huntsman, for instance, who's no longer in the race, unfortunately, but somebody who's been a diplomat, been a business leader, been in government. He's lived in foreign countries. Speaks different languages. That process of being abroad, engaging others' cultures, and learning their languages, I think that really moderates you. I think the process right now, this primary process that we have, lets you choose from among guys with a bunch of different ideas. There's some real extreme ideas in there, and I think there's some moderates. And I think instead of me telling you who that is, I bet that the the person that's chosen out of the process will be one of the more moderate Republicans.
On that very positive note, I thank you, and I hope that we will see you again involved in GMN in some other form, either in Malaysia or in Washington, D.C.
Count on it. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.